Welcome to this edition of the High Strangeness Factor on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm your host, Steve Ward. On each episode of the High Strangeness Factor, while we explore all aspects of the paranormal and the unexplained, we put a special emphasis on the parallels and underlying patterns that seem to lie beneath the surface of all of these strange mysteries. This is part two of our interview with Nik Hayes. And Nik Hayes is a UK-based author and researcher. He spent almost 10 years photographing and filming in the infrared and ultraviolet parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, documenting the strange invisible life forms, craft-like objects, and other phenomena that appear to be existing just beyond the range of normal human sight. Influenced by both the earlier photographic work of Trevor James Constable and Italian UFO research group, the GRCU, Hayes uses a whole range of attraction and detection methods, including a cloudbuster and a Geiger counter. In September 2016, his first book, Quest for the Invisibles, was published by the Book Tree in San Diego. The book covers the first 5 years of his work and features dozens of photographs and video stills of biological UFOs and other phenomena captured at his research area near Oxford. In 2017, he launched the Quest for the Invisibles website as a platform to present new evidence, and video footage can also be seen. The Quest for the Invisibles QFTI YouTube site. Hayes continues with his photographic work and has recently co-written a two-part paper entitled Positive Findings on Constable's Organotic. I think I mispronounced that again. Organotic, boy, that's a tough one.
Bioforms.
I guess I need that little thing
mouthful.
to tell me where the emphasis is.
Yeah.
Bioforms.
There's positive findings on Constables. Yeah, positive findings on Constables' organotic bioforms.
There, I'm glad you. I'll just have you say it the next time. That brings together
a mouthful.
That brings together photographic evidence from many different sources in support of Constable's original work in the 1950s. This is part two, as I said, of an interview with Nik Hayes, and this is one of the areas that I've always found fascinating. Trevor James Constable and his work with infrared photography, catching in the sky basically invisible critters, as he would put them. And I encourage everybody to go to check the podcast and go back to part one, because you're missing a lot if you don't listen to that. But Nik is just kind of a very basic recap. We talked about Trevor Constable in the early years when he was out in the Mojave Desert taking these really bizarre photographs, and how I didn't know what to make of them at first until I heard Constable interviewed years later and found out he was a very credible guy. He wrote a follow-up book, a more complete book, years later called The Cosmic Pulse of Life, which we've talked about. He was connected in one way or another with people like Wilhelm Reich, Dr. Ruth Drown, Rudolf Steiner, and the list goes on. We may touch on that again some more. Is there anything else we should tell the listeners about what we covered? We covered the first part of your research. How you had a classic, a very strange UFO sighting that was more like a creature than anything nuts and bolts or mechanical, and which was very unusual, by the way. And you got a hold. You were inspired by both of Constable's books, and you took it from there. You figured out how to reproduce his research, and you started filming and taking pictures with what, the infrared and ultraviolet techniques?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, basically, I bought a digital camera and I sent it off to a company called MaxMax in USA. And what they did, they basically well, in digital cameras and digital camcorders, they've got like a blocking filter, often referred to as a hot mirror, and it basically blocks invisible light. So, in the case of the infrared camera, they took this blocking filter out and they replaced it with an infrared pass filter. So basically, the camera only sees, it doesn't see visible light or ultraviolet. It just goes straight in at 720 nanometers. Or if I use a 780 filter, it goes right into the infrared. So that's what I use to do a lot of it. I use movie mode as well on the camera, but I've also got a full spectrum camcorder, which has been converted so that it sees ultraviolet, visible light spectrum, and infrared. And you basically have to use different filters to block out or pass the desired part of the spectrum. So I often film in the ultraviolet with that. So the infrared and the visible light are blocked out. Um,
Uh,
so a lot of my footage I've got in the ultraviolet, a lot of the good footage.
And we already covered a lot of your early experiences capturing all kinds of different uh, creatures, things in the air that are visible to the naked eye. And we talked about how you differentiated between sometimes known birds or insects will create an illusion, kind of a streaking effect when you take the photograph. And some of those resemble a bit some of the what appear to be unknown creatures. And you developed a
Well, that's
technique.
right. Yeah.
Yes, but you
Yeah, well,
developed a
that's
technique. Go
because of
ahead.
the interlaced video. Yeah, well, especially happens because of the interlaced video recording. If something's moving fast, you kind of get one of the frames slightly faster, and what you get is a repeat. You get like the insect's body stretches into a long rod, and you get multiple repeats of the wings. And that's the effect. And I've actually, on the video that I talked about, Skyfish Fact or Fiction, you can actually see some live footage, which I've slowed right down. You can actually see this effect happening as the mosquitoes fly about a foot away from the camera. I've got them so they're reflecting sun and slowed it right down. You can actually see this effect. And I've explained how this happens. But yeah. Well, basically, I mean, a lot of the things I capture, they don't look anything like birds or insects anyway. But plus, a lot of them get, most of them give off Geiger
Right.
counter hit.
Has
Plus, the fact is, I film in the visible spectrum as well, so that I can see what's happening in the visible spectrum and what's in the infrared or ultraviolet.
Right, because if it's an insect or a bird, you're gonna pick up something, even if it's a small little dot in the visible light.
Oh yes, yes.
Now, what about you?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, yeah.
You have a couple of dogs, and have your dogs ever been with you when you've done some filming, and have they ever reacted to anything out there that you took a picture of?
Oh gosh, yes, yeah, definitely. Well, after my cat Roy died, and I had the weird stuff going on near the grave, I noticed that the Geiger counter, I'd get a Geiger counter hit, saying that radiation levels had gone up, past the threshold which I set, which is zero point 0.20 microsieverts per hour. And what happened was the dogs started reacting, and they kept staring at my greenhouse. So I started taking photographs of the greenhouse, and I caught four entities in the greenhouse windows, and the dogs reacted to them. And it was after these entities, the photographs that I'm talking about now can be seen on the website, the Quest for Invisible's website, and they're in the evidence section. Now, the first entity I caught looked like some kind of, it looked like someone from the 18th century, a really weird looking, like a night watchman, and he just appeared reflected in the window. And the next one was looking like an ET, and the next one looked like it got horns, and it looked like it got a creature on its lap with horns. And then the fourth one was this real hideous looking thing. And then I started getting stuff going on in the room upstairs where one of my dogs was sleeping with me, and the other dog would refuse to go in my room. But it disturbed my dogs really badly that my dog Lucy has only just within the last month started to go upstairs by herself in my room. But they were looking around the room at things, and one of the dogs, Selfie, was snarling. And I got this real horrible feeling of dread. And this went on for nearly 2 years. I started, and I took loads and loads of photographs during this time, and I caught all sorts of light trails and various entities, which I've put onto the website. But the dogs would see them. And the funny thing is, the dogs would suddenly stop and look, and then the Geiger counter would go off,
Oh,
and then I'd get that feeling of dread. But of course, but yeah, I mean, I don't normally get that feeling. It was just during this 2 year period. It was almost like fear, and things were happening in the room. The dogs would start barking, and I'd wake up, and I could hear my voice being called, and things were being moved, and it started affecting my sister because I live with my sister. I live in a flat alongside my sister's house. We're sort of connected by the roof, but stuff was happening to my sister. She was hearing footsteps and tapping, and hearing a voice called, and the doorbell kept ringing in the early hours of the morning. And we've got like a gated place where we live. You can't even get in. And the doorbell kept ringing, and strange things happened. A photograph of my dad that I'd never seen before, or my sister had never seen before, actually appeared in my sister's room. A decent photograph of my dad. I'd never seen a photograph of my dad when he was young.
So
Um,
this stuff
when he was young,
started,
and it just appeared. Yeah, it started after Roy died. And I
and
think I opened
after
myself up to it, and more stuff was showing up.
and after you started to delve into this sort of thing, you had all these other things start to happen. When you described that feeling of dread,
Yeah.
what was that as a result of the
Oh,
dogs reacting, or was that something more like you're sensing something that wasn't right?
I was sensing something that wasn't
Okay.
right,
Well, so
combined with the dog's reaction as well. Because the more the dogs were freaking out, the more it made me, freak out. Because I could see that they were watching things walking around the room, and one of them was like whimpering, lying on the floor. Um, the other one would just look the other way, as if he didn't want to see. And I kept turning him around, saying, "What's there? What's there?" And they didn't want to know. They got very, very scared, and it affected my dog Lucy really badly, really badly.
so you really had it was like three confirmations. You had kind of a sixth sense where you knew something wasn't right. The Geiger counter went off, and the dogs were reacting to something
Yeah,
unseen. So that's
yeah.
confirmation of something, we don't know what exactly, obviously, but something paranormal, something anomalous occurring there that's real. So,
Well, this is the thing. The thing is, when you open yourself up, see, from the word go, I've always looked up to the skies and sort of said in my mind, if there's any invisibles up there, will you show yourself for me? Of course, I was doing this for years and years, not knowing that I was actually summoning and asking things into my presence. And I had no problems for many, many years, until Roy died. And all of a sudden, it's almost like everything was coming in. I've got some great photographs, and I look at them now, and I was thinking, oh, that's great. But at the time, I couldn't even bear to look at half the photos, because I just didn't want to kind of believe what sort of stuff that I'd filmed.
uh,
It's freaky, really, really scary at times. You
well,
know,
there is.
it's not good when you've got stuff going on like that.
No, I don't think
Um,
I'm not sure. See, I'm the kind of guy that I've had maybe one really weird experience, but for the most part, I've even been in the I don't know if you're familiar with the TNT area, north of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where they saw the Mothman for the first time. I've been out there several times with
mm.
people that have experienced things, and they're out there seeing and experiencing things, and for the most part, nothing is happening to me. I suspect that if I was out there with you filming and
By
so forth.
yourself.
Well, if I
Yeah,
was even if I was with you, I may be the guy that said, "Nick, you're crazy. Nothing's happening here. There's nothing going on."
yeah.
But uh, but it's interesting because Trevor. Oh, by the way, Trevor James Constable, when he wrote his first book, he called himself Trevor James, and it was just
Mm.
I want people to know that because he was a businessman. He was also an actor. I can't remember the name of the film. He was actually in a film with Richard Burton playing a small part.
Oh, was he?
It was a war movie. I've even got it. I can't remember the name of it, but he was of course he was a native New Zealander originally, but he was in there.
That's right. Yeah,
He
yeah.
was he was playing an Australian in this film. So I don't know
Oh
if that was
no.
a huge stretch or not, but yeah, he didn't. Unfortunately, he didn't have much of a part. But that was and even when he spoke at Giant Rock, and there's a great book which chronicles some of that. I've been a huge fan of Gray Barker, who's he was a kind of a trickster and would color up stories and everything. He was the publisher of Saucerian Publications in Clarksburg, West Virginia. I even got a chance to meet him briefly at a MUFON symposium, but
Wow.
that's another story. But he wrote a book called Gray Barker at Giant Rock, and it's about him and Jim Mosley, the editor of Saucer News, another old-time saucer guy. Both have left us by now, but he and Jim Mosley drive out to Giant Rock in 1970, the last Giant Rock convention, and in the introduction, Mosley says that Barker takes some license because he talks about some of the people he talks about in the book weren't actually there at the 1970 convention. They were there much earlier, and one of them was Trevor James Constable, and there
Right.
he was known as Trevor James also. And
Yeah.
it talks about his first meeting with him, so that had to be long before 1970. And but anyway, like I said last episode, Constable was not well received, because
No,
he
definitely
talked
not.
he talked about this dark side that you're talking about. And this was the Giant Rock Convention, boy, where the where George Van Tassel would gather together all of the contactees and all the true believers and
Mm,
long-haired Venusians and peace, love, and brotherhood. And they did not want to hear Trevor James Constable's message. But it's a really very entertaining book. All of Barker's stuff is. But I want to also mention there's a book by Brad Steiger that mentions Constable. It's called
yeah.
well, there's two of them. There's this one's the UFO abductors, and he gets into the Constable had a belief in there's the Persian and Chaldean tradition of
Mm,
the something called the Aramanes, who are fallen angels and expelled from
yeah.
heaven.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Do you
yeah,
know about
yeah,
that?
yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah,
Constable thought that there were these dark forces out there battling the good forces and the dark forces that he believed, and he even seemed to give some credibility to a guy that wrote the Atlantis in the Latter Days. He talks about that in this great correspondence between him and Gray Barker. Anyway, I won't belabor this, but ladies and gentlemen, if you got to get Nick's book for one thing, Quest for the Invisibles, uh, and you have got this is such a fascinating area of research. It doesn't end, and I've got all these notes in front of me that I'll never get to, but anyway,
yeah,
keep going with what you're talking about in this particular phase of your
yeah.
research. Things start to get
Okay,
a little
so
bit dark.
yeah, so basically from 2010 to 2015, I was recording mainly sort of in the infrared and ultraviolet in the daytime, and I wasn't really sure how to start filming at night. But having looked at the GRCU, the Italian research group, the fact that they used different instruments such as precision magnetic compasses, temperature indicators, frequency measurements, ultraviolet detectors, and ultrasound, they used and Geiger counters, and I thought, oh wow, I think I'll get a Geiger counter. So I started just going out with a Geiger counter at night, and I was getting hits now and then. I took photographs, but nothing happened. But it's then that every time I walked past Roy's grave, I got a hit, and every time I walked past the greenhouse. So of course I kept going out every night, every night, every night, taking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photographs. So I only ever ended up with 4 of these entity photographs. But I had a strange thing happened in the room. It was almost like an entity was trying to form in my room, and I grabbed my camera and tried to take a photo, and the camera just packed up and never worked again. And that was a really expensive camera, um, and that was it. Never got a photograph of anything. The camera just stopped
Huh.
and never worked again. And it was really annoying because it cost me a lot of money because I had to send the camera off to America to get it converted. You see, because there wasn't a firm that I knew of in the UK doing it at that time. Um, it was a very weird time. So I got another camera. My sister helped me to get another camera, but everything kind of went dark. These entities that were popping up and strange things happening. It was really weird, but I couldn't help going out there and filming, and it unbalanced me quite a lot, I must admit. I was hearing my name called just as I was about to go to sleep, and I'd wake up and I'd think I'd hear someone walking around the room, and one of my dogs, I'd put the light on, and my dog would be stood up and shaking. It was a horrible time, and I say it affected my sister. So I just carried on filming and filming at night, and during this period, I filmed some strange stuff in the sky. Some of that's on the website. I filmed sort of like a load of lights that seemed to be linked to some sort of solid object, although it was in the infrared, and it was directly above some trees in my garden, and it looked quite big. And that picture is actually on the front page of my website. It's a line of lights that are going across. But I started getting a lot of strange things. Getting a bit worried at the time because when you're doing this all the time, it becomes very, very obsessive. And when it's the only thing you're really pushing in your life, as you discover things, your whole life changes. And I felt that I was perhaps attracting things to me all the time, and I didn't realize that before. It didn't occur to me. So somebody said to me, you want to watch what you're attracting into your life, and I thought, oh wow.
Have you ever
Um,
thought
and but I
about
feel okay. I feel all right now.
have you ever thought about some people that go into ghost investigations and that sort of thing, do some kind of meditation or protection prayer or whatever? Have you ever done or
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
about
No,
doing
I do
anything
use.
like that? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is, I never, until I recorded those entities in the greenhouse, I'd never recorded anything paranormal. I was just filming in the sky, so I wasn't quite prepared for it. But yeah, I do protect myself. Yeah, you have to. I think you have to. You have to protect yourself. With light and whatever. People have different belief systems, but I do protect myself now against negative things because I didn't realize it all comes back to this. positive and negative thing again. I started to realise the more research I do that there are positive things out there and and unpositive things or darker things, as you say, and you can get sort of like dragged into it all. And that's the main reason I kept away from. I've always kept away from paranormal stuff. You know, I've kept away from Ouija boards. I've kept away from a lot of that stuff, and especially with channeling, because I knew a lot of people that were saying they were channeling this, that, and everything else, and a few of them have really gone insane, and I've never seen them again. And you just don't know, what you're channeling. This is the thing, and especially after Trevor James Constable um, adventures, that he had in that he talks about in They Live in the Sky, where he lost control of his actual body, and he was
Right.
getting conflicting reports coming in. So I agree exactly with what and reading that bit which Trevor wrote sort of gave me a bit of forewarning, really, of what could happen.
He was
And then
getting
I
some
finally realised that was happening. Yeah.
he was getting some crazy, like we mentioned a little bit last time, he was getting some crazy messages that had to be nonsense. But at the time, he didn't know. It was too new.
Mm,
And for those that don't know, when he wrote his second book, The Cosmic Pulse of Life, he reflects on those times, and he you can see that he's a little older and wiser about what he was letting in. And he really questioned a lot of those early messages. Now, you mentioned the obsession thing. Uh,
mm,
I kind of consider myself obsessed, but I don't think I've had. Well, but I go way back. I had a roommate where we had some odd things happen, but John Keel again, he warned people about getting too obsessed because the
mm,
phenom he warned that belief was the enemy. The phenomena seemed to adjust itself to fulfill a particular theory he had at the time, and
yeah.
he admits in several interviews he said he was paranoid. There's even a chapter of the Mothman Prophecies that says paranoiacs are made, not born, and he was just knee
Yeah.
deep into it. And there's a lot of literature that people can find on Keel now to find out the weird things that were happening to him. So I can I do have at least an idea, although I haven't really experienced anything like that myself, Nick. I at least have some idea of what you had gone through, what you were going through.
Yeah, well, if people look at the website and see in the evidence section the entities, especially, they'll see the entities that I'm talking about that came, and some of them don't look that nice. And people say, you can look at it and think that's a great photo, but people don't realise what goes with it. It's not just a photo; it's often things that go with it, and the feeling that you've got with it that you can't shake off. And you can turn very paranoid because it's your whole reality. You need to get grounded sometimes, and that's something I didn't do for many years. But it's something I do now. I decided to have a break from it. I appeared on the Paranormal UK Radio. I did two shows actually last year. I decided to have a rest from all this for a while, and then I did the shows on Paranormal UK Radio, and then I thought, right, that's it. And then Dave Schrader wanted me on his show, so I did a Dave Schrader show on Midnight in the Desert. So I spent quite a lot of time just talking about things, and I didn't do a lot of filming. Then I resumed my filming again in sort of like around Christmas time, just gone. And then that's when I got some of the best footage ever. Some
Wow.
giant amoeba-like things that are just like Trevor James Constables, totally invisible. And I called them in. I actually called them in. Stood there and telepathically called them in. Set up the actual tripod, and they appeared right in frame. And you can see some movement where it's almost like they've adjusted themselves and moved in. And the first amoeba was it was like amoeba-like thing, like the one that Trevor caught in 1957 when he was sitting down at
Yeah.
breakfast at the campsite. Well, he caught that he caught six different frames, didn't he? Six successive frames
Right.
of this huge thing. Well, I caught one exactly the same as Trevor, and this is like 50 odd years later, just over
That's
50 years later,
that's
and that's in the
phenomenal.
paper. Yeah, and then a week later, I figured that this thing must be coming through a portal. Because it was exactly where I've been aiming the Cloudbuster for a while. I gathered there must be a portal or something perhaps there. So I set up my camera a week later, as in total darkness, and I started taking like 20-second exposures and then 10-second ones. I did a whole, say, like 10 20-second exposures and 10-10-second. And in two of the photographs, there's a huge amoeba which is blue, and you shouldn't see blue in the infrared because the blue is basically blocked. And it was very, very faint, but it looks like a spaceship, but you can actually see the vacuoles on it and the markings, that you get on sort of like something in the microscopical world. And the thing is, the second photograph I took of the same thing, same amoeba-like form, it actually changed its shape. It had grown much bigger and it fitted exactly in the frame. It's almost like it knew, and it showed itself because the paper was just about to be published, and I hadn't caught anything like an amoeba, and I was thinking that would be a nice topping on for the paper. And then within 2 weeks of thinking that, I had a picture just like Trevor James Constable's, and then two extra bonus ones that show sort of like a blue illumination, which shouldn't even appear in the infrared because the the colors, the color blues blocks. It's right down there with the ultraviolet, but it seemed to illuminate itself, and it's almost like it's burnt itself onto the camera. It's very, very strange. But so that topped off the paper for me, which was obviously trying to bring as much evidence to support Constable's original claims. And what better than actually capturing an amoeba, sort of just right above, well, it was above a 35-foot tree, and I zoomed in slightly. I didn't see it at the time. I just felt this overwhelming urge that I was being watched, and I went out with my camera and just started taking random photos. And I caught 6 frames of it, but in 5 frames you could just see the edge of it. But I caught a really clear shot of just one. Well, I think it's half of its size. It's absolutely huge. It looks just like the one Trevor caught in 1957.
That's
Um,
that's astounding.
yeah, no,
uh,
it was full on. It was my best capture yet. And then obviously the two amoeba, well, the same amoeba that I caught um, in the 2 different frames. But I've also went on to capture some more. Some of them even bigger. I went through 2 weeks of going out almost every night. I've got probably about half a dozen more photographs showing huge amoeba-like bioforms that have come right in, above my research area. It's amazing stuff. Amazing stuff.
uh, yeah, that is phenomenal. And because as I said before, when I saw Constable's early photographs, I just had no clue as to as to what they were, if they were real or not. I even
Mm.
I was the kind of kid that was always faking UFO photographs, with whatever. And so I tried to fake a Trevor James Constable type photograph. And I shouldn't admit this, but I got some suds and I hung it in front of the camera to a degree to make it look like that was going to be my sky amoeba. Well, it didn't actually work very well. So fortunately, those are lost in oblivion somewhere. But but obviously, these photographs you've taken, uh, this is not this is not something easily explainable. It's not a dust orb.
Oh,
This is
definitely not. No.
it's not this is not a film camera, so it's not going to be something on the emulsion. It's not a speck of dirt on the lens. It's not some kind of a temperature inversion in the air. It's something much, much different.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you can see the vacuoles on it and the other markings, which just look like, from an amoeba. And on the actual blue amoeba, the one that I call the blue amoeba, that I took a 20-second exposure and then a 10-second. On the second exposure, the thing's grown about a third bigger, but you can still see the vacuole markings the same. And when you put one picture over the top, they line up exactly. And that is on the paper. Those pictures that I've just talked about, the amoeba and the two blue amoebas, that's actually on the paper. I think, which is just part one's been published, but part two is going to be published soon. Um, so, and I'm probably going to put some of those on the website at some point as well,
Well, that
or even
that
make another YouTube video about it or something, perhaps.
well, that'll be good. Um, let's see. Boy, there's so much. So uh, but you continued doing the research before your long break. And was there anything else that manifested that you experienced on sort of the negative side? Well, before I ask that, you mentioned that you got kind of an image of what you called an alien. I'm curious as to what it did. It
Yeah,
look
yeah.
like did it look like a gray, or did it just look like something
No,
very strange?
uh, out of this sort of grey alien head shape, but it didn't look grey. No, what I did, what I did I got the infrared camera and I used the actual flash. And what I did, I aimed the flash. Well, I noticed basically that when I kept getting these hits on the Geiger counter, I shone a torch into the greenhouse window, and what I noticed is that it reflected back and forward and like went into infinity. So I thought, wow. So basically, I decided to use a flash. So what I did, as soon as I got a Geiger counter hit, I just took a picture. And this is why some of them are a bit crooked, because I was in pitch darkness, couldn't see nothing. So the flash went off, and the actual flash was quite bright. It lit the greenhouse up, but I saw nothing. And the infrared camera only saw a small part of well, it's visible light, but the infrared camera just saw a small part of the red. I think the barely visible red, and that was enough to light these things up. So I used the camera flash to actually light these things up and make them visible in the infrared. But this alien, you can see this little alien. It looks very much like it's a it's a bit like a grey, but it's kind of got more of a humany looking face on it. But it's definitely got a long neck and got a bulbous sort of head. And those photos can be seen, I say, on the Question Invisible's website. But it looks very much like a sort of alien to me. but it's
You
got
know,
looks like he's got a shirt on, a t-shirt, and you can see his neck, a spindly neck, and a big
uh,
bulbous head. And it's sort of turned around. You can see big bulging eyes on it, and you can actually see a mouth bit. And yeah, yeah, it's a very strange looking thing,
well,
and
you
that's
know,
the only entity that looks like that I've ever caught.
there are some strange crossovers in this entire realm. That's one of my things I look for, are patterns and parallels in the paranormal. I mentioned Rosemary Ellen Guiley before. She told me that she went to Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky one time. And what you do is
Mm,
you go
mm,
there and you wait in the dark. And she's with a
yeah.
friend, and she said, "Do you see what I see?" And what they saw, it looked like an alien gray standing there in the shadows in an old ancient sanatorium that's supposed to be just haunted by ghosts. What the hell is a gray doing in a haunted building like that? But these kind of things show up often, where there's some kind of a weird connection for whatever reason that starts to pull this stuff more and more together. Do you have when you've done a lot of this photography? Do you have any theories, any speculation as to what are these things, and is there more than one explanation for what these things are or where they come from?
Do you mean the sky,
Yes.
the biological sky? I
Yeah.
just think that there's. I just think that each planet. I'm starting to think that each planet's perhaps got lots of different levels around it, different sort of vibrationary rates. And I think consciousness is in a different form. I think there's various levels existing at the same time. Perhaps at higher frequencies, and I think they're all living simultaneously. Um, but when you come back, I mean, of course, I think I've got to the conclusion that a lot of the craft that people see aren't actually craft. They're actually these sky beings. Some of them are like creatures, like the amoeba. I mean, as you know, if sometimes they do come into the visible. As has been mentioned in Trevor James Constable's book, and they glow, at night they glow, and sometimes they can be disc shaped. They can be sort of like like torpedo shape. They can take any shape, and some of them seem to be able to take any shape they want. But I've seen some of this summoning people are doing, and there's some very strange things that change form. And I've caught a craft-like thing, which I'm convinced is an actual entity, but they appear to be made of like plasma. It's kind of like they've got their form in sort of the form in heat substance, the fourth state of matter, which is why they register in the infrared. But they seem to be able to take any form they can. I think that's true of the entities. I mean, the funny thing was that the first picture I caught in the greenhouse looked like this ghostly guy. And what happened was the next, perhaps about a week later, I walked past the greenhouse. Geiger counter went off again, and in my mind I said, "Oh God, I'm not really into this ghostly thing because this is the first sort of ghostly thing I'd ever caught." I said, "I'm more into filming ETs." And then lo and behold, when I checked the photograph, it looked like an ET.
Huh.
And that's that same being also looked very similar to the other being that I'd caught before it that looked like a sort of a Victorian type thing. The face looked quite similar. So I started to wonder whether it was just an entity taking any form it wanted. It's almost like it was trying to please me when I made the comment that I'm not really into ghost hunting. I'm more into filming
Yes.
ETs. And then an ET like thing showed up. Um, but the next one was hideous. It was this like being. I mean, I'm only saying hideous because it was a very dark face, and you could see its eyes, and it looked like it had horns. And behind it was two snarling skulls, and you could see the teeth in them. And this being that seemed to have horns, it held like a cat-like creature in its arms, and that had horns or ears. And they're looking back out at me from the greenhouse. And that was the third photograph I took, and that was a bit scary because I didn't. It was almost like a scene into hell. These two snarling skulls with big eyes. They almost look like Tyrannosaurus skulls with big black eyes and then white. And they were snarling over the back of this entity, which looked like it had got horns. It was very very weird, and it looked like a cat. And obviously that's around the time when my cat died. So I started thinking all sorts of things. It took me a while to actually kind of level out and try and work out, what's happening. But I think there's energy forms that can take any form they want. Um, and this is the thing. It's no like black and white thing you can put it down to. The things just are. They seem to be able to take whatever form they want. And especially some of these sky creatures, they seem to be able to change. I photographed a craft-like object that changed in every photograph I took of it. It looked different in all three. Um,
Well,
you
Constable
know,
did talk about ether ships, and he believed that some of these were,
yeah,
I guess, you could say, aliens or extra dimensionals coming from elsewhere,
etherical.
and, and
Yeah,
they would
that's
have beings that could change shape or whatever on them,
where
based
the
on his
actual.
research.
Yeah, all the craft was the actual entity. I'm very
Yes.
much of that opinion. Yeah, I believe they're interdimensional. I don't believe that these things are coming from space.
Well, Dave
I don't.
Schrader talks about he went out to the Gilliland Ranch many years ago, which is another hot
Mm,
spot in Washington State. I forget the name of the mountain out there, the lake. Trout Lake with Washington. And,
right.
they have a lot of activity out there. Well, he said he saw something one night that looked like a creature. It looked sort of like a manta ray scooting through the sky, and it was kind of bluish, and he couldn't believe his eyes. So,
Mm,
occasionally this happens. And there was another great, I won't dwell on it, but Constable mentions another strange sort of creature sighting in 1925. It was a letter that was sent to Ray Palmer's Flying Saucers magazine, and these guys had landed in some of these old Jennies, these
Oh, that's
biplane
right. Yeah,
planes.
yeah. On
Remember that?
top of the messes. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
The OX5. Yeah, yeah. And they saw that creature coming into land, didn't they? And it had a bite out the side of it, and it was exuding like a metallic froth, wasn't it? And then
Yep.
another creature came in and went over the top, and then some suckers like came out, and then it went glowed as bright as the sun, and off it went. Yeah,
Right.
very. Yeah, yeah. That's I know. It's great. When I read that, I thought, right on. That was. I mean, that was in the Cosmic Pulse of Life. Trevor talked about
Right.
that, didn't he? In his
I,
critters section. But yeah, no, I quite believe. When I saw that, I was like, wow. That
I
doesn't surprise me at all.
I
Doesn't
went and tracked
surprise me
down
at
the
all.
original. I've got the original magazine, so I could read the whole letter, which is
Wow.
pretty interesting. Hard to find those things sometimes, but
Oh
Ray
yes, yeah.
Palmer was boy an interesting character. He was knee deep in a lot of this stuff. But let me pause for just a moment. I want to remind everybody that you are listening to the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I am your host, Steve Ward, and with me today is Nik Hayes, and this is part two of an interview which deals with his book, uh, Quest for the Invisible, and in following in the amazing footsteps of Trevor James Constable. Um, well, let's see. Is there any place? Well, I want to know more about the paranormal stuff that happened, and even maybe some governmental interference that went on. But you can take this
Yeah,
wherever
yeah,
wherever you
yeah,
want to go, Nick. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, basically, as I said, I had to send my camera off. I sent my camera off in 2010 to get it converted to infrared to a company in America, and a camcorder, and I had no problems. And then I think it must have been sort of after they'd passed some terrorist law or something. I don't know. They were looking at things coming into the country a bit more. The next time I sent my camcorder, um, I traced it through Kennedy Airport, and then after about a week or so, it was still in Kennedy Airport. Um, Taken off for inspection. It hadn't gone to the firm, to do the work on it. And then I noticed that I was being watched and followed, and helicopters were coming over. And I had like a couple of months of strange things like that. And they sit there in black cars. I saw a guy talking on a walkie-talkie, and as I went by, he said to the woman with him, he says, "That's the male we're interested in, like about me." I thought, oh my
Right.
God, so it was very strange. I had a lot of strange stuff going on, getting like weird phone calls, and this was all
Really?
really happening at the same time as the paranormal stuff,
Well,
so
well,
it was
just a
really
second.
full on.
What kind of phone calls were you getting?
Just phone ringing and no one being on
Oh,
the other end, or just some
uh,
strange noise. Like, yeah, yeah, no, that's very strange things coming. And but I was followed for quite a while. They were following me everywhere I went, but I realised they were following me. But I've
and,
also had a problem. Had a helicopter sent over really low. It came right down like it was going to land on the house. When I was out there with the cloudbuster.
oh,
I was
good
I was
Lord.
talking on the phone to a friend. I had a load of clicking on the phone because me and my friend were talking about things to do with the cloudbuster and etheric energy. And next thing I know, this really great helicopter comes over and goes round and round, then lowers itself down like it was going to come and do a rescue from the garden. And all the neighbours were like looking and that. And my sister says, "Oh, do you think that's a training mission?" I says, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I was
Yeah,
thinking, "Oh
let's hope
shit,"
so.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so a few things like that, and quite a few emails as well from people, like threatening type emails and things from nutcases. You
Right.
get them. Um,
Um,
so
but
there's
the
quite a few things.
I'm just curious the strange sounds you heard on the phone. Anything you could identify? Just like I don't know a mechanical sound or just maybe a like an electronic sound or something.
Yeah, a few electronic sounds, and then
Okay.
one sounded like a scream.
Huh. Okay.
Um, but it's on my mobile, and I don't really use my mobile that much, and there's only a few friends that I've got that ring me, so I don't know what it was, but it was always like I'd pick the phone up sometimes, well, get on the phone, and I could hear like this. It was like an office sound, like my phone had gone through to somewhere or it's being listened to. And one of my friends has experienced the same sort of thing as well. But
Well,
that was just sort of through a certain period of time, and then I got my camcorder back, and everything's been sort of okay pretty much. But I mean, the helicopter thing was probably about a year ago. That was the last
so
time.
so you wonder. I
But
mean, it could be a crazy coincidence, but if you came to somebody's attention and they want to mess with you. I mean, they
mm,
didn't come to your door and say, "Stop using that cloudbuster, Nick."
no, no, not
They
as
messed.
such. No.
If it was a real government entity, they mess with your phone and buzz you with a helicopter to scare the crap out of you. So. I don't get it, from any viewpoint, but this is kind of typical with what has happened to a lot of UFO type investigators. I even had some strange beeps on my phone once years ago when I was heavily immersed in this stuff, but it may have had just a mundane explanation. But so now I remember I heard you uh, on another show, and you said something about was there a time when you it sounded like you were being followed or somebody was paralleling your path?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. That was the Live Alley. Yeah, yeah. This is yeah. This was crazy. I've talked
And
about
again,
this on a
is this
few
in
programs.
in the
Yeah.
midst of
Oh
your
gosh.
investigation?
No, 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 no. This was a bit earlier. No, this was
Oh, okay.
basically. This was about 19. I used to live in a place called Wood Farm, in Oxford, and to get down to Cowley, my friend's house, where we used to have a jam with the band that I was in at the time. I could either get a bus, and I had to go. It took about three-quarters of an hour on a bus. I had to go right out of the way to get on another bus and come back. But there was a shortcut that went through this nature reserve called the Live Alley, and it goes down sort of like a hill, and it goes into like it's got thick trees either side. I would walk down there a million times. Used to go down there with my girlfriend at night and spent quite a lot of time down there. Never got scared, never thought it was even creepy. Now, this night I decided to go down and get the bus. The bus went, so I had no option but to walk down Live Alley. And it's about a 20-minute walk, and then you're on the golf course and you go straight down to Cowley. But what happened was I was walking down this footpath, and all of a sudden I could hear this crunching keeping up with me to the left. And where it was really thick shrub, right, with loads of little rivers and bits going through it, like, tributary thing. And it was really weird. No one could see or follow me as far as I knew. And what happened was I suddenly stopped, and this crunch stopped, but it took an extra crunch, like it was someone that didn't realize how quick I'd stopped, and my ears suddenly went really kind of extra sensitive. So what I did, I carried on walking at a sort of a faster pace, and I suddenly stopped again, and I heard this extra crunch as well. So what I did then, I basically decided to sort of like walk quite fast. I did this like hop, skip, and a jump, and then I stopped, and I heard two more crunches, and I heard a almost like a wolf man type snarl. And I'd never experienced nothing like that. I just had to fight or flight, and I ran. I ran non-stop back to my house. But that really scared the life out of me, and I kind of not forgotten all about it, but put it to the back of my mind. And then I did an interview with Ben Eminem Jones, and he said, "Oh, I was trying to describe how scared I was when I was getting the paranormal stuff going on in my room." I said, "Oh, I haven't been that scared since I had this weird encounter." And he said, "Oh, tell me about it." So I told him about it, and he did it on his show. Then somebody else got involved. Deborah Hatswell, who's into the cryptids and things, she said, "Oh, can we talk about it on on one of her? Well, she's got like a website with and a YouTube site, so she did like a told the story basically. But that was really weird. And it was like there's something invisible, and it was definitely bipedal. You could tell by the way it walked, and it was like it got really annoyed that I knew that it was following me, because it kept doing an extra crunch every time, like it wasn't prepared for me to suddenly stop. And I kept catching it out every time by suddenly stopping, and it did this extra crunch or so. And then the third time, it's almost like it realised that I knew, and it sort of went, ah, and I just ran. I've never been down there again by myself. I went down with Ben a couple of times, and I'm due down there again soon to see if we can film anything. But Ben's quite a big bloke, so I'm not too
That's
scared. I can probably run faster than him. But no, it really freaked me out, and it was like I don't know. I mean, I've never. There's been a lot of reports of strange things in that area over the years and sort of nearby, but I don't know what it was. But it definitely wasn't an animal. It was like a humanoid thing following me. I could hear the crunch because of the particular way that the valley came up. You could hear like an echo sort of thing from it.
and this is
Um,
fairly close to where you live.
where I used to live, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and that was about the only paranormal type thing that I've ever had. So that was ages ago. It was about 19, probably about 1994. So so that's it. I was pretty involved with life really for many years. I didn't really look into the paranormal, never had any experiences. I certainly never had any sort of ghostly experiences till the invisibles, and strange things started happening and the animals started reacting. It just got really full on, but it's okay now. I was convinced that entity was coming through a mirror because the dogs kept barking at this mirror, this big antique mirror that I paid quite a bit for. So I basically wrapped it up and put it in the garage, and I've never taken all the mirrors down. I also had loads of. I've been to Egypt. My sister lived in Egypt for a bit, and I got loads of models of the Egyptian gods and loads of papyrus, and my whole room was like covered in them. And after this weird stuff started happening, I took everything out because I was convinced that it was in some way linked with all these ancient Egyptian things and
Well,
the gods.
it
You
may
know?
have been, and it may not. There may not have been any power in or of this itself. But again, I go back to John Keel. He talked a lot about belief and how belief can manifest some of these things. He
Oh,
uh,
definitely,
he
definitely. I reckon that's yeah.
and what I wonder is he thought that now his thinking wasn't static and he was always changing, but for a while he looked at he thought the only maybe objective things about the experience were perhaps these strange lights, uh, these strange meandering lights, and that perhaps people were being programmed somehow. He even talked about transmogrification of energy, where he said he wasn't so concerned about what people were seeing, whether it was a UFO or a creature or whatever. He thought there was as he put it, a cosmic mechanism behind this, and that's what he wanted
Mhm.
and he thought that sometimes people were getting too wrapped up in the facade, so to speak. I mean, there was something
Oh,
really going on.
yeah,
You
yeah,
feel
yeah.
the same
I
thing?
suspected. Yeah, yeah. I suspect. They're pretending to be spacemen, pretending to be craft, pretending to be aliens.
Yes,
That's what I think. A lot of them. That's the sort of lines I'm thinking along. And of course, you go back into the stuff, back to the Watchers and stuff. These beings that came down who were essentially in there. You've got all the same stories in South America. You've got like the Inca. And all these well, even going back to the Native Americans, they all talk about these gods coming down and teaching them this and that. And these gods are basically reptilian in their form, in their basic form. A lot of them wore masks, or they didn't show themselves in the reptilian form, so they wouldn't scare people.
right.
Um, and I believe this has got a lot to do with what's going on. I believe it's very interesting, especially the Book of Enoch.
Oh,
Discovered that a few years ago, and that's I started piecing things together, and I thought, wow, all these different continents where they seem to have pyramids and these massive technology, and it all seems to have been. I mean, I was listening to a guy, was it Michael Cremo,
oh yeah,
um, and he was saying, he thinks that a lot of these cities were destroyed in a flood, sort of like 12,000 years ago, and basically it's almost like the gods were kicked off the earth, so to speak, and we sort of went back to sort of living, back on the land and everything. But I believe it's what's going on at the moment has got something very much to do with the stuff that's gone on in the past. Um, you know, there's just too
yes,
many things that seem to sort of add up, and especially when you had the Mayan prophecy. A lot of people thought the world was going to end, but I reckon it was the opening of the doorways for these ancient gods to come back and things like that. I'm starting to look at it a bit more like that. Because I used to think that everything was a craft, but until I discovered Trevor Jones Constable, I never even considered that A, UFOs could be invisible, and B, that they could be anything other than craft. The fact that when I found out the biological craft, when he talked about biological UFOs, and I thought, wow, that's just like that thing that I saw, and that really made it really helped me to understand what I'd seen, and it was just like an epiphany, to be quite honest with you. So I wrote off to Trevor, and then obviously I got straight on with it. I had this like necessity to do it, to film my own stuff, and to get further understanding. And that's sort of what's driven me, really, just trying to push onwards and prove that Trevor was right, and also present the GRCU work to people that wouldn't normally see it.
right. That's good
Mm.
in and of itself. But um, oh, I lost my train of thought. But one of the things is that when in the midst of the that year where all this stuff was going on in Point Pleasant in the Ohio Valley, the Mothman stuff, it was like when I give talks on it, I say, this is like a series of phantasms. I mean, none of this, there's no narrative here. It doesn't pull
Mm.
together. It doesn't make sense. And it's like you're watching the previews in a movie. and you're getting all these little snippets of what's coming up, and you think, well, when I get to see the movie, it's all going to make sense. But in
Yeah,
this movie,
yeah.
it doesn't make sense. And when you were talking about the past and the present, one of my areas of interest is, of course, I'm sure you're probably familiar with Jacques Vallée, Passport to Magonia, and so forth. He made these phenomenal connections between folklore, like the little people, the fairies, and so forth,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
some modern day UFO experiences, and the parallels are incredible.
Yeah, I thought about it. I thought perhaps they're changing. Now they're pretending to be spacemen, whereas before they show up as pixies and different things and this and that. Perhaps the same things are showing up now as beings.
Well,
I've kind of looked down that kind of line myself. It's a sort of way of thought I've been going to for a while. I don't know. There's so much involved in this whole UFO thing. But some people, some of these organisations, I mean, they're not interested in what I've got to say. They just want like shiny UFO photographs. They're
That
not interested.
that's
And
right.
it's,
They got well. A lot of people out there are have their own narrow investigation. And my when I give my talks, I said that's fine to specialize, but you need to keep that door open a little bit because I mentioned again Rosemary Ellen Guiley. She was investigating shadow people, people that would have these things appear in their
yeah,
bedrooms or whatever. Well, she
yeah.
found out that a significant percentage of them were also experiencing classic alien abduction phenomena. So who the hell would have seen that coming? There's so many.
Well,
Uh,
that's it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I suddenly realised a couple of years ago that I used to think the UFO phenomenon um, and and the ghostly thing, the paranormal, were separate, but I don't believe they are. I've
yeah,
started to come to the conclusion that they're very, very linked.
and that's what Keel presents in UFO's Operation Trojan Horse. And when I first read that book, I wasn't happy because I was a very happy ET guy. You know, they would
Yeah,
jump out of their flying saucers with their little silver suits and collect their soil samples. And I thought, what are you trying to do here, Keel? I'm very very content,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to hear about ghosts or any of that stuff. Well, and also, I interviewed a lady that had a classic missing time. Have you had missing time, by the way? Have you ever had a situation where you think you might have some time unaccounted for?
No, I can't say I have. No, no, it's something that I've never. No, unless when I used to go out and get drunk when I was younger. It's a missing time. No, no.
Well,
But no, no, I've never experienced any sort of weird stuff like that.
well,
When I've joined my work.
maybe that's when they grabbed you and they took the blood sample and thought, okay, we have to get out the breathalyzer.
I must admit that when I was looking at that UFO, that visible one on that Christmas Day evening,
Yeah,
um, that it all got a bit weird. Then I had to just go home in the end. I obviously wanted to go home and get my camera and try and take photos of this thing or film it, but it just got really weird. It was just so full on. I was looking at it thinking, oh my God. At one point, I was going to knock on everyone's door and say, hey, UFO, UFO. But it was
right.
Christmas Day evening and it was getting on for like 9 o'clock. Towards the end of the evening, nine, half nine, and all the windows were black, and it was totally it was totally quiet because it was Christmas Day evening, and I thought, oh my God, nobody else has seen this. I'm the only one, and it was a very crazy thing. And the more I looked at it, the more I thought, gosh, I was pinching myself even, and it sounds corny, but I actually was pinching myself, saying, God, is this real? Is this real? Totally blown away, and I thought it was going to be on the news the next day. I could come down in the morning and put the telly on, thinking they was going to say, oh, UFO flew across, part of Oxfordshire at low level, and everyone saw it, but I never heard anything.
You wonder why it was, since this did look biological, why was it that it was visible to you in this particular time? I just
I'm
wonder if it
I'm
was
starting to
normally
wonder what it was meant. I reckon, I don't know. It's because my path with Quest Invisible started from that day.
right. Well, it could be. It could be something that was meant to be and set you on this path. I was just wondering if it was something that maybe it lives higher up in the atmosphere. For some reason, it came lower, and because of the I don't know air
Well, it
pressure
was hiding
change
in
or
the fog.
something different.
It was hiding, yeah, it was hiding in the fog. There's basically, it was a thick layer of ground fog that came up, and the sky was quite sort of foggy, and basically you could only see it in its entirety when there was a thinner pocket of fog, and that'd only be for a few seconds, and it sort of like skirted the edge of this of where the ground mist came up, and well, above the houses, obviously, it's about 150 foot above the houses, but it kind of went in a straight line. It's almost like it was skirting through the mist. Not many people would have actually seen it because you just saw this sort of warm, sort of pink to orange glow. So a lot of people wouldn't have seen. Obviously, a lot of people were inside watching, Christmas television. Um, But I didn't know what to do. I considered ringing the police for 1 minute, and then I thought, well, no, they're going to think I'm, off my head or something. And don't know what, I thought it's not worth the hassle. But no, it's very, very strange. And the fact it was only going at walking pace, and it basically went directly above me. My paths crossed, and the only reason why, because my dog wanted to go back up the alleyway again. And I nearly said, no, it's too cold. But I decided to go back down. And if it wasn't for my little dog, Alfie, I would never have even looked up in the sky and saw this thing. So therefore, there would be no quest for the invisibles. None of it would have happened.
Well,
So it's
most of us really
and it
don't
looked
look up in the
familiar.
sky.
No,
There are
and it looked familiar. It was almost like I'd seen it before.
really.
It was a really weird feeling. Yeah, it was almost like I'd seen it before. It's almost like I recognised it when I saw it deep in my mind. It was almost like, I don't know, I always felt perhaps I was meant to see it, or perhaps I'd been shown it, perhaps, in before I came into this life, incarnated into this body.
Right.
Something I don't know, but it just seemed like it
It
was meant
seems
to be.
as strange as it was something familiar.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, that's the thing, yeah. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have started looking into UFOs full on and into Trevor James Constable. And the fact that it looked living, if it wasn't for that, I would never have discovered Trevor James Constable, and I would never have written the book. So everything in my life changed from that night onwards. It blew me away so much that I could never be normal again, really, after seeing it.
Well,
And
that's
10
the way.
years later, I'm still doing it.
Well, in Michigan, we had the swamp gas sightings, with Dr. J. Allen Hynek back in the old
Oh
days
gosh,
saying,
yeah,
and so that
yeah.
was, I was a kid in junior high at the time, and that
Swap
just,
gas.
yeah, I know, that fueled my imagination. And if my buddy Kevin hadn't gone to New York and brought back that book of Trevor James Constable, I wouldn't have been on this
Mm.
track, and I wouldn't be talking to you here tonight. Uh,
No, no, it's strange how it all works out, isn't it?
yes, and so for now and recently, the strange stuff, the paranormal stuff has pretty much subsided for you.
It seems to have done, yeah, and I've also lost the
Okay,
fear. I kind
good.
of, it was almost like these things were feeding on fear, I thought. And then one night I just got real angry, and obviously I got rid of the mirror, and then the dogs slowly calmed down again, and it just seems to have gone, and I've gone back to kind of just getting on with the normal, nighttime UFO photography, and I mean, I'm just more concentrating on the skies at the moment, really, or sort of just at head height in sort of wooded areas and things towards the edge of my research area. So yeah, no, I haven't had any strange things happening anymore. It's weird. It's almost like something I went through mentally. It was almost like I was tuned into that realm for a while, perhaps. I don't know. It was very weird, and I've not caught any more entities since. I've taken thousands of more photos. Never had any more Geiger counter hits near the greenhouse. Never felt there was anything in my room.
But you're still
But I got some
getting,
great photos through that.
yes, but you're still getting some phenomenal shots of bioforms.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm concentrating on those at the moment. But yeah, but it's almost like they know that I'm looking, so they're showing themselves up, showing themselves to me. So yeah, I think that it's all to do with I think they connect. They know you're looking for them. I think all consciousness is one ultimately. So I think there's a connection to some of these other intelligences. But as you said with Trevor, it's once you open up the door to these things, it's very hard to shut the door. I mean, luckily he was okay, wasn't he?
Yes,
He stopped doing the
yes.
channeling stuff.
And as you told me that your book Quest for the Invisibles is a tribute to Trevor James Constable,
That's right. Yeah,
who died in
yeah.
2016. And it's kind of nice. I'd like to think that the show is a little bit of a tribute to him too,
Oh,
because it
definitely.
has
Yeah.
certainly influenced both of us. And I went from thinking that not knowing if he was on the level or not to believing that he was truly a pioneer into something truly amazing. Uh, we're getting close to the end of our time, Nick. Could you
Mm.
give all your websites and all that good stuff again? The people can contact you.
Yeah, yeah. So the book is Quest for the Invisibles, and if you just Google Quest for the Invisibles, you'll see it come up. It's on Amazon. It's available in quite a few places. The website is www.questfortheinvisibles.co.uk. I'll say that again: www.questfortheinvisibles, all one word, um, .co.uk. I've also got a YouTube channel which is called the QFTI YouTube channel. That's the name I've got on there, QFTI, and that will come up when you do a search for Quest of Invisibles or Nik Hayes, and you see loads of footage on there, lots of live video footage I've taken of some of these things that I've been talking about tonight. And of course, there's a paper that's just been, well, part one of it's just been published, and that's on it's called the JPOT website, which is www. Psychorgon. It's basically psychorgon.com. So psychorgone.com. It's basically the Journal of Psychology and Orgone Therapy, but they deal with anything orgone related. So basically, the part one of the paper is actually on there. If you just Google, the paper is called "Positive Findings on Constable's Organotic Bioforms." So if you're interested, you just Google it. You'll find it on the website. And part two, which is my evidence, because part one covers the GRCU and Trevor and some other evidence. But part two should be out in about another 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, that's good. And the
But I will
origin.
put a link to that on the website. Yeah.
Okay, good deal. And the orgone, of course, is something that Wilhelm Reich came up with, which is essentially the life force. And
Yeah,
too
life
much.
chi prana. People
Yes,
call it chi
right.
prana. Yeah,
Too
it's life force. It's
too
basically life
much.
force.
Too much to recap here, but very integral part of the whole thing with Trevor Constable and this kind of research. And also go back and listen to part one of this interview as well. Nik, I cannot thank you enough for being here because this has been these past two shows have been fantastic, and I really hope you'll come back very soon because I know you've got a lot more to talk about.
I'd love to. Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. Thanks for having me on. It's great. I love talking about this sort of stuff. Yeah, no, whenever. I'm
Okay,
always there
and
to come on. Yeah,
and you can always contact me too, as long as they let me do this. You definitely will be back on the show, as long as they don't shut me
yeah.
the door. So again, uh, thank you, Nik Hayes, for being here on the High Strangeness Factor.
That's a
And don't
pleasure.
don't don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, Quest for the Invisibles. You need to buy that book. And sit tight, Nick. I'm going to do my closeout. I'll talk to you for a couple minutes after the show.
Okie
And
doke.
and I also need to thank Irene Allen Block and Mark Johnson, and they are fearless leaders here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Andy Mercer, who is going to be sorry he missed this, is my part-time co-host and also my full-time producer, and he makes the show sound pretty good, at least as good as it's going to sound. Also, I want to thank Brian Zeller, who does the original music for the show. I can be heard weekly on Mac Maloney's Military X-Files on the same network as a correspondent, and I am Steve Ward, your humble host here on the High Strangeness Factor, a displaced Yank here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Thanks for listening. I will see you all again in a fortnight. Take care.